Okay, I think the way I have the view, I can see everybody. But if I miss you, I'm trying to minimize the screen a little so I can see some things on my computer. So if you've got your hand raised to speak and I don't call on you, just feel free to unmute. Otherwise, I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves, and I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:03. And Don has agreed to take minutes. Thank you. And our first order of business is public comment. So I see we've got Mike Fisher and Herb Olson. Either one of you have a comment that you'd like to share, or anyone else, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Sure, let me unmute myself. So thanks, thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak for a minute to you today. And I, let me just start by recognizing, how difficult these times are for the district. Keeping students and staff safe during this pandemic, this moment, while delivering quality educational programs, combined with the fiscal constraints that we find ourselves in, is a tremendous challenge. I appreciate the hard work, and I appreciate the committee, the board, and the administration. I want to speak for a moment about the discussion about closing schools, community schools, in part or in parts or in whole. And I guess I'll just say out loud a recognition that I come today as a citizen advocate with a bit of passion. Sometimes it's good to warn people when you're going to speak with passion. So again, these are extraordinary times. We hear that said over and over. In fact, it's so true and being said so often that it's becoming ordinary to be extraordinary. I like Jerry Brown's of California's phrase, the new abnormal. We seem to be in a continued phase of tremendous change. I fear as we enter the 7th month of managing the coronavirus that we're starting to lose touch with just how unsettled these times are for families, for small businesses, for kids, for teachers, and for schools. So the main point I want to make tonight is that when the world feels so unbelievably topsy-turvy, we need the institutions that provide stability even more. And if local community schools aren't a key institution of stability for kids and for families and for our communities, I don't know what is. So I think this is the wrong time to even have the conversation. This committee is about public engagement. I don't think you can engage the public at this moment, given what's on everyone's plates. The coronavirus, this social political moment that we're in, the public recognition of the impacts of racism and the institutions in our public institutions, the fires, the warming planet. It's a very unsettling time to be alive. Every one of us knows it, and the community feels it, though I have to also remind us that some members of the community feel it in a different way. My life is not so turned upside down having to work from home, but many members of our community don't have that, that kind of protection. I want to recognize the economic impacts, not just the labor force, but the increase in the loss of family income, the increase of the costs of goods, the food at home price index rose 5.6% over the last 12 months period, ending in June. Again, there's a tremendous amount of evidence around that, that this is not just an unusual moment. This is a tremendously difficult moment. So in that context, you are contemplating engaging the public in a discussion about closing schools, and I don't know what to say. I'm just really deeply saddened by that. I imagine many of you are thinking, I don't want to close schools, but what am I supposed to do? And I guess I want you to be thinking, I can't possibly support the discussion of closing schools at this time, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I read in the news and in the notes here, from within the district about discussions about numbers 4 and 10 years out, both student numbers and budget numbers. I just want to say out loud, I have absolutely no confidence in multi-year predictions at this moment. Tiny aside, did anybody read the New York Times article this morning about global change migration? Things are really changing. Now, I'll be honest, you know it, I'd be in opposition of the discussion of closing schools at any time, but at this moment, I'm just really dumbfounded. Lastly, I'm so thankful that we passed in our Articles of Agreement a standard that an individual town would have to vote in favor of closing a school, the school in that town. It provided a really valuable stopgap that gave many people the comfort to vote in favor of the consolidation. And then I read in the notes a discussion about changing the articles, about taking away that stopgap. And I guess I ask, though I know you can't answer and shouldn't answer, I ask rhetorically, are you really considering a vote by the whole unified district to take that stopgap away, take that protection away, a vote whose purpose would be to take the protection that we promised just a few years ago away? It might work. You might be able to do it. The unified vote might well vote in favor of such a thing, and we'll never know how individual towns voted on it. But I guess my last thing to say is I hope that the members of the board can't stomach such a maneuver. So that's my passionate statement, and thank you for listening to me for a moment. And I think Herb is gonna come after me to talk a little bit about a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Herb, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see my screen picture on the screen. Not that it's, particularly attractive, but, you do hear me, I hope.
Yes, we can hear you. And we see your name, but you're not visible.
Yeah. I see my name. That's good. That's helpful. So I'm Herb Olson. I live in Starksboro. My claim to fame in terms of education in the district, 2 sons, graduated from Robinson School in Starksboro and Mount Abe. And, I really thank you for the opportunity to attend your meeting and to give a few comments. I totally support what Mike says about, geez, this just doesn't seem like the right time. I won't, just push it down the road. There's nothing sacrosanct about town meeting. People have, schools, administrations, towns, cities have votes on all sorts of things at all different times. So I totally agree that this is truly not the time to do it. However, if the district decides to push forward on this this year, let's make sure that the community has the kind of information and enough information to give you folks, the Community Engagement Committee, some meaningful feedback about, what to do here and whether to close schools. I think that most folks are not eager to close schools, but the way the issue has been framed, it's like if the community wants to keep schools open, it'll have to accept either significantly higher taxes or drastically inferior educational programs. Now, since we're asking taxpayers to pay penalty if we go over the threshold, you're going to risk budget approval. So then the choice is narrowed to, well, do you want to reduce your programming or keep schools? And then closing schools seems to be the least attractive option. Frankly, where I sit right now, I suspect that the choice, the way it's been framed, is a false choice. But you know what? I really don't know. And I don't know because we really don't have the kind of information that we need to have to make, a meaningful response to, well, do we need to close schools? So the question, I guess, then is, what information do we need as a community for members of this committee, the Community Engagement Committee and the board, and ultimately, of course, the community in terms of a vote, to make an informed choice about whether or not to close schools. Okay, so first, I think we need to know the financial assumptions and calculations upon which the forecast is based that the district needs to cut 1.2 million this year, this fiscal year, or this coming fiscal year, and what is it, I guess, times 10, 12 million over the next fiscal year. I know this is what Patrick has said. I haven't seen the calculation. The educational finance system is pretty complicated, and things change. But I think we need to know how those numbers have been derived. Second, we're being asked to make a really critical decision for the future. Do we want to eliminate community schools? That'll be permanent. If you close a school, that's permanent. I think we should have an outline of all the administrative functions, the educational programs, and any other operational functions in the district. And I think you need to assign a budget number to that function or program, and an analysis of whether, everybody might think, well, all those functions and programs are necessary, but can you do them a little more efficiently? What's the number that you can attach to that? Is there some other way to do this other than to close schools? And frankly, unless you have that kind of discussion, that kind of information analysis and discussion, I think the community is going to be hard pressed to make a decision. Third, in terms of actual financial information, I think it's really, really important to have a net savings amount attached to each school closing option. I know that a bunch are being considered. I attended the facilities committee subcommittee or whatever last night. They're going to try to narrow the number of options that are out there, but they all involve closing schools in some manner or another. And I think you got to identify what's the net savings for each one of those. I haven't seen that yet. I suspect those numbers are out there or have been developed or at least estimated. I just haven't seen them. And, you got to break it down by staff, professional staff, non-professional staff, operational costs, administrative costs, in order to really make the case that, we don't have any choice but to close a school. Well, let's see what the numbers are And I think you need those numbers both to make a decision and to get meaningful feedback from the community. That's your job as a committee. And to make an informed decision ultimately. So I know that the timeline of this committee is to engage with the community on these issues, I guess over the next month or so. I think it's really important that when you reach out to the community, when you engage with them, when you have meetings, when you have surveys, that the community is given enough information to be able to make give you some good, meaningful feedback. And right now, I don't think you're really going to get that, frankly. Oh, I have a final question, and it doesn't have anything to do. I'll keep Mike out of this. You know, I understand, you know, I just don't understand why Addison Northwest was chosen as a potential partner for a merger of some sort. You know, I'm not saying whether it's a good or bad idea, but, you know, why Addison Northwest? I mean, we got a couple of other surrounding districts, you know, Champlain Valley, you know, the Middlebury schools, you know, just from a just sort of macro viewpoint, you know, they might offer some real advantages. So I just don't understand why the focus on Addison Northwest. I'll conclude, let you get on with your business. I know you got a busy meeting, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them. All right, that's it.
Thank you both for being here, and if you're able to stay for the meeting, we would welcome that. I think that as we go through our agenda, we'll be touching upon some of the things that both of you raised, and please join us for future meetings as well. We appreciate the input and participation. We're going to shift to going through our agenda, and I just ask that if you want to join us, that you just stay muted, and we will be revisiting at the end of the meeting, giving you a chance to add public comment again. So if there's anything you heard or had questions about, that would be the time to raise them again. So thank you both. So we are going to need a motion from board representatives to approve the minutes that Liz took from our September 1st meeting. So if I could get a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved, Rob.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second Andrew.
Okay, so Rob and Andrew, and all those in favor of approving the minutes from September 1st, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any abstentions or opposition? Okay, so the minutes are approved. Great. So I want to move into the meat of our agenda, and I think reflect for a minute on a little bit of what Herb said, which is what our work is right now. And our timeline has us building toward a goal, which is to give the board enough information from the community to determine what to put on the ballot on town meeting day. And every year we put the budget on the ballot, and we get input and we have conversations, and then we hear a recommendation from the superintendent on what that number should be, and then we put it forth, and we hope that it will be satisfactory to the voters and they will approve it, and by and large they do. And this year the board is trying to decide whether we need an additional item in order to sustain our financial solvency as a district. And so that's what these conversations are about. What information can we get from the community to determine what direction we should go as a board, to determine what recommendations our superintendent might make to us to say, here's what I think we should put before the voters based on the NESDEC report, based on the input from the community, based on our financial situation, based on the recommendations of the facilities study group. So all of these things are going to converge around this idea of bringing something forward that is a budget for this year, but as is our work as a board, we're forward looking. And so we need to also be thinking not just this year, but the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And at our last meeting, we heard from Patrick where that trajectory is going. And it's concerning enough to the board that that we recognize that we are in a place where we have to make some decisions to help counter those challenges. So thinking about what to put before the voters, you know, our goal is to put something that people are going to vote yes for. And so we're contemplating what those questions might be. And that's where the idea of a straw poll came in. And so for our agenda this evening, I thought maybe we'd start there with what those questions might be, because I think that helps us to move backward in terms of making sure we are, as Herb pointed out, providing enough of the right information to the community and in a way they can digest and give them opportunities for input. So when we get a handle on what those questions are, I think that will help us better focus in on how to then have people be educated enough if they're faced with such a poll to even know how they might answer. So I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I think I'm going to share my screen for a moment because I'd like to show you kind of how Rob and I framed these questions today. And I think that's maybe easier than asking people to open in a link. So hang on one moment when I do that. Okay, so Floyd, hi, welcome. You're the only person whose face I can see right now. So can you just give me a nod if you can see my screen? Great, okay. All right, so, so what Rob and I discussed today, and please chime in, Rob, as well, is this idea that what we're working toward is yes votes on our budget. And I think maybe, you know, Patrick can weigh in with a little clarity on this. Would this be a separate item or part of the budget? But either way, a budget and our proposed direction for our long range facilities plan, which perhaps would require another item on the ballot. So given that, with all good engagement, we want to have some demographic questions because we want to do the best we can in reaching out to as wide a range of of the voters as possible. So here are some examples of questions we might include for the demographic piece. But the questions and feedback on those are welcome. But the questions that I most want us to think about are the ones that would constitute the bulk of the poll, and that we think capture what it is we're hoping to get a better sense of from the voting public in terms of if they were faced with an item on the ballot, what they might be most likely to approve. And it may be that they wouldn't approve any of these things, but again, thinking about what to put on that ballot, these are some of the questions that have been put out there. What I think would be helpful is if this group could take a few minutes to look at those questions, to think about whether they capture all of the possible things we would put before voters, so that we can share this feedback with the board at our meeting next week. And then the board can weigh in, and then we can then work to build the survey. I'll just say one other thing before I pause. Rob has offered his wife's help in terms of building what the actual, how exactly to phrase the questions. She has a lot of experience in building surveys, and I think we could maybe use that help. So right now we're just looking at, generally speaking, are these the questions we want to ask? The specific language we'll come back to, and we're hoping that she could make some recommendations for us, or even maybe come to a meeting to share with us her thinking around how to phrase these. But I just wanted to put that out there. So let's see, I want to figure out how to make my screen bigger so I can see everybody. Okay, we can see some of you. So I'm going to pause there and Rob, is there anything you want to add about our process? Oh, you're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's fine.
No, I think Krista and I talked, and these questions are sort of, obviously a big 30,000 foot view questions that, and when you try to unpack some of them, I agree with Herb, like there's a lot of information that needs to be shared. And I tried to reflect on, Andrew, you've spoken to the sort of the three legs of the stool and what we talked about at the board retreat and have discussed, but trying to also, I think it's important to really have clear, concise language in what we're asking folks that they know as clear as possible with the right information, so that they understand what it means, aside from closing your school, why that is even an option we're putting forward and stuff like that. So this was, I think, Krista, you summed it up really, really well. But also, I don't remember if there are other questions that we really wanted to also ask along the way, not just these 30,000 foot view questions. I think, and so any feedback would be welcome.
So so I just open it up, and I want to keep sharing so you can keep looking at these questions, but I can't see everybody's hands. So okay, I see Nancy with her hand up. So why don't you go ahead, and then if I don't see you or call on you, just unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Well, what strikes me about these questions, and I'm sure, Rob, you're thinking about this sort of thing, and you sort of alluded to it just now. In order to answer any of these questions, people need a lot more information. And it would be, I know this group is planning to get some information out before the straw poll goes out, but the information that people need to answer these questions needs to be provided at the same time that they're facing the questions, because not everybody's going to make those connections. So just for example, people would need, for that first one, people would need to understand that right now a school cannot be closed without a positive vote of the town in which it resides. And it would probably be helpful for them to know that that was one of the articles of consolidation that were approved by the Department of Education, or the agency, maybe it was the agency then. To answer the second one, people would need to understand that would be changing the article that I just talked about. The third question, people would really need to understand, and I talked about this at our last meeting, people would need to understand what the spending threshold is projected to be, what are the dollar impacts from my taxes at a given assessment rate this year, the dollar amount of my school taxes, and what would they be if we didn't exceed this threshold, and what would they be if we did. People would need that information and to understand what a threshold even is in order to answer that. In terms of the second to last bullet, people would need to understand what programming is being considered. And it's not enough to show, I mean, I don't know if the administrative team has had a chance yet to talk about what they need to do in the current year, especially, and beyond, to stay under the threshold, or either in the coming year or in some years beyond. But surely people need to understand what are the sorts of options that would that the administrative team would consider viable in order to maintain the current configuration of schools. That word programming, it's too big, and I said it last time too, but people, I don't know if I'd vote to cut the programming unless I know what programming is up for consideration to be cut. And we had some of that conversation in some of our community meetings. And so I'm sure there's some good thinking that people have, the administrative team has had. Whether they've had it together, I don't know. And then the last bullet, people need to understand why, why would we, what's behind that, and why Addison Northwest, and why not a different district? There's a whole bunch of stuff that would have to be unpacked and be available to people to easily get to, but at the time that they'd be answering that question.
Go ahead, Floyd.
I look at this and I think if we took the word vote out and said, would you consider closing a school? Would you consider? Because if you were asking them to vote, we're asking them to make a decision, yes or no, on these questions. If we change the frame of the question to, is this something you would consider? Because to Nancy's point, we can't possibly give them all the information for all the scenarios for them to be able to make any sort of a quick, informed decision on those questions. But we can ask them, is this something you would consider based on what you know currently?
Krista, can I respond?
Yes, go right ahead.
So yeah, Floyd, I've chewed on that a little bit too, and again, Krista and I today chatted about the idea of consider versus actually would you vote for. I'd feel better with knowing really where people stand. In the sense of consider, because you can consider one thing in the fall, but when you show up to vote in the spring, your vote might be very different. Now, your opinion, if you say you're going to vote one way in October and then show up in the spring, and you could vote another way, of course. But I think I personally would feel that I would love to have them as concrete of an answer to these questions as possible moving forward when we consider that we do want to know what we put before the voters seems to be the will of the owners of our school district. So that's my response. I have thought about that. I've considered the consider, but I feel like there's a lot of gray area there. And I completely agree, Nancy. We have a lot of information that does need to be shared, and that's a heavy lift, but that's a lift we have to do.
Krista?
Go ahead.
So the one thing I was thinking about your comments, Nancy, is I absolutely agree that people need to be given all the available information and understand the nuance. I'm concerned, because I have to learn this lesson the hard way a lot, is that while I value the nuance and the information, I think a lot of people, the more sophisticated we get or the more we try to help them understand it, if we're trying to pair this at the polls, like give the information to them while they're having to make this straw poll, I think we're going to lose people. So I think that it's probably a discussion about how to find the right balance between giving them enough facts to make a decision or to answer these questions in an informed way without also just losing people and they start checking boxes. because I know folks don't read forms, people don't read terms of service agreements, things like that. So I think it might be a challenge to figure out how to do that.
I think asking people how they would vote at this time is ahead of the game. I would almost use a 1, 2, or 3. Like, how strongly do you feel about this? Because I think we get more information, and I think, like, I wouldn't even be comfortable answering some of these questions because I don't know. It's there's a lot of, like we've been talking about, a lot of things going into all of this, and I think not a ranked choice voting thing, but you know, would you? I mean, yeah, asking someone, would you consider to close your school without information is silly, right? I mean, all of these questions are silly if we don't get people information. That's what we're working on. We're in a process right now. We just haven't done it yet. So when Herb was talking about that, it's like, of course, we're going to get as much information out as we can. But I would almost rather, I don't know. I mean, it's a straw poll. We're still going to have to make decisions. And some of the decisions in this might not agree with the straw poll. I mean, but anyway, just my thought.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
Well, I think I agree. You can't overwhelm people with information, but it's really a formatting problem in a straw poll. There's got to be a way to show people the questions, and then to also show them an easy way to get to information, background information on this question that might help you answer it. So, I mean, that's really a formatting problem. But, you know, at the same time, I don't want to leave what Mike said out of this discussion. This is the new abnormal. The sense of urgency that the board may feel about making some decisions around closing schools are based on projections and some assumptions that are hard, that it's very difficult to have confidence in at this time. So I'm wondering if it would be wiser to focus the straw poll questions on the FY21 budget. And in the meantime, let some of what's going to settle, especially given the influx of people coming into Vermont, the likelihood that we're going to have many more jobs in the near future because we're going to be able to expand broadband access across the county, those sorts of things, because we don't know who's going to get elected president. We don't know what's going to happen with federal money being offered to states to help them support their schools. We don't know any of that. And to get people wired up about this in this time where we're in the new abnormal, with so many things up in the air, I think is going to backfire.
So I think I'm just looking at time, and I want to talk a little bit about, or make sure we have enough time to look at this really important question of getting as much information out in as digestible a way as we can. So if folks are okay with shifting to that, and then if other feedback comes up about the survey questions themselves, we can come back to that. But I know that Ian has sort of a tight schedule, but I want to give him the chance, if he's still with us, I think he is, to share the video that Kristen and Kim and he worked on to begin to tell this story. And I want us to keep in mind that it is one vehicle. So it would be great if we could view it and then offer feedback for Ian, and yeah, just any reactions we have to it. So Ian, is it best if I share my screen with you? Is that the best way to do this? Or allow you to share your screen, I mean?
Well, I don't know
Or-
how are, in terms of
Or
the
should I
lag.
just do the link? I have the link, so I can.
Yeah, I mean, if you did the link, I'm not sure of the lag when you're sharing a screen and how that would play. I don't know if in terms of the video, in terms of your connection and other people's.
Oh, I see.
You could share the link. It's like one thing to share a still, but to share a whole video might be more complicated.
Okay.
You could share a link to the video in the chat,
Okay.
and people could watch it. Since it's only 2 and a bit minutes, people could watch it individually on their computers, and then we could talk about it after that. Was that
Okay.
if that's okay with everyone?
So I am going to get the link. Let's see.
I can get it. Hang on one sec.
Oh, there we go. I've got
I
it.
have it. Okay.
Okay. And Ian, is there, or Kristen or Kim, anything to say about this as people are looking at it, or should we just have at it?
I just want to thank Ian for hustling, and he and his wife did a great job. And I think everybody, what we need to keep in mind as part of this process is that this, as Krista said, is just one vehicle, but there's going to be a series of 3 of these videos, so that as much information as we can possibly provide for people with links to a web page that has cost breakdown, and for people that want that kind of detail, that will all be there. So, so the idea behind this is that it's a way to reach people as best we can, to get involved in the conversation, and to know that we're working towards this October 26th straw poll to get a sense of where people are and how people feel. So, so that's all.
Okay, so everybody take, I think it's no more than 3 minutes long. So let's all view it, and then while you're muted, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
They got it down to 2:15. That's awesome. So 2 minutes and 15.
Are people, thumbs up if you've had a chance to look at it and you're all set? Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Ian and Kristen and Kim, for all of that work. Let's talk about the video and see what sort of feedback we might have on it. What are people's reactions? I see a thumbs up from Don.
I thought it did a really nice job setting the context, kind of bringing us from our history up to sort of where we are now, and set the stage for digging a little deeper into our challenges and what really will be our future challenges. So I thought it was a great first segment based on what we discussed at the last meeting.
I had the opportunity, I don't see anybody else raising their hand right now, so I'll jump in. I had the opportunity to share the video with Sue McCormick, and she thought it was great as well. Between when she and I talked and when I saw the second version, she had made a couple of suggestions that actually you guys wound up doing. One was to put more diverse representation of people in the images, so that was great, including referring to the community engagement work and including some people that look more like students. She did suggest something that I think is maybe a place where we could tweak a little bit when we talk about the work from the fall. And this leads to the question about our educational values. She was suggesting that we be more specific about what came out of the fall engagement work. So I think it was mentioned that there were some values that were developed and information that was shared. And her suggestion was, could we be more specific and, you know, remind people of these 8 core educational values? And that leads us to then giving us an opportunity to ask people in some way, shape, or form to revisit those or to.
We were going to do that in the next video. So we were going to do the values in the next video, and I think, was it Kim that was going to call those out for me as I'm doing that one? Just so that was going to go in the next video as data, because I consider that data, right? Do you consider that data? So the next video is like the data thing.
Great.
So that will involve people probably having to pay a little more attention, and that would include those values. In fact, I think the video might start with that. I was I don't know yet. I haven't started writing it, but
okay. Awesome.
Kim and I had talked about that, and we the next one is the one that really has a lot of stuff, and maybe some will be in the next one too, but having the next video be and the values I consider to be data, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so the first one is kind of like, hey, here we are, without getting into the weeds. And then the second one will be mostly weeds. And then the third one, as we said, is more, how do we move forward knowing what we know, and maybe more data, but we'll see.
Okay, that's helpful. And it looks like, thank you for that reminder, Kim, about the timeline in the script and how that will unfold. And when you're looking at the values piece, that the document that we developed with Sue articulates them really well, so you can just use that as your guide. The other thing she was mentioning was, I think it's like about a minute or so in, we talk about you know, working together to create a vision for our district, and we were wondering if vision is the right word. We've already got a strategic plan and kind of a district mission and vision, so maybe cutting out that piece about vision specifically, that it's that we could maybe tidy that up or be a little more clear.
At the last meeting, Patrick had used that word a lot, so that's why I put that in there.
Okay. Do you know which section I'm talking about, Patrick? If you go back to the video, I think it's around 1 minute and 6 seconds, or it says, how can we shape our future together and create a vision to improve our students' education in a sustainable and fiscally responsible way?
Yeah, I don't think it's inaccurate to use the term vision, but I
Okay.
with your point that it may be confusing because we do already have a vision statement. And in fact, the vision statement is shape our future together. So maybe a different word may be better and less confusing. I don't know how many people will be too confused. I don't know how tuned into our vision statement the masses are in our 5 towns.
Right.
So confusing to
Right.
many.
So I think
I think her
people,
concern was more that to not give folks the impression that we're going to be doing at this stage visioning around how we're educating kids. It's visioning around how to surmount this. I don't know. I think I'm not probably articulating the concern well, but if it's not a concern, then we don't need to worry about it.
And I don't remember using the term vision so much as I've been thinking about it more as architects of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Just our ability to design something, to make some decisions, to be intentional, and really determine what our future looks like.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I do think it's a great context setter. And in light of some of the things that you've said, I don't think it would mar the other 2 versions to at least quickly list the values that those community meetings generated. And also even to list the goal areas of the district strategic plan. There is one image that I think really needs to change, and it's the point early on where the consolidation of districts is described, and the image shows school buildings becoming one school building. And odd as it may seem, there are people who still don't understand what consolidation was, but I don't think we want to be sending the message that going from multiple school buildings to one school building is something that's already happened. So I think that image probably needs to be adjusted.
If anything, it should be more like the number of people who ran the school changed. Some people left and now it's one group, but all connected to those 5 schools. You know, instead of we have a little cluster of board people around schools, we just came to one group and the schools are still as they are. That would be more what consolidation was, really.
Kristen and Kim, can you guys remind us? I'm thinking about our timeline, and I know we want to roll this out next week, right? So is that all 3 videos going out next week, or is that the first one next week, the second one the week after that, the third? Can you remind us of the timing?
I think they're 2 weeks apart. Are they about 2 weeks apart?
Oh, I think you're muted still, Kim.
Sorry. In the chat, I put the media timeline. So the first draft of the videos today, and then we had comments and edits due by the 16th. It's hard to kind of, in a group setting, like I said, I think last time, design by committee is really tricky. It's almost easier if people send in their comments via, email or, quick, even in the chat here. And then we can take everything and look at the whole project, and there's a week to do that. So final production between now and the 21st. But in the meantime, we're going to be working on the second script for the second video, and then the production will happen during the week of September 28th. So, you know, so it's going to go fairly quickly because we have to move right into the next one. But we have 4 or 5 days here, and so the best thing to do would be to send comments via email, and then remember that we're really trying to keep it to 2 minutes, between 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, because people will lose people, and we want to engage people. So the important thing is to try to keep people's attention, have a place where they can go for more information, and so they know that this is something everybody needs to start talking about. So
yeah, because of the time, we're going to have the mentioning of the strategic plan, mentioning of the values, putting some data up in the next one. Again, that's what Ian recommended, keeps people's attention. And this is just one way of conveying information. We'll have all the charts, and those will all be available on the website that people can go and see, or they can call us and ask questions. I mean, we're definitely trying to get as much out there as we can, and this is just one way. And so we've got about, after this video, we've got about 5 more minutes, and as you can see, you can pack a lot into that amount of time. I was kind of surprised. These guys are good, and that was really cool. So anyway, so we can and I'll definitely have Patrick look at that vision thing and see what I can email that to you right now, Patrick, and maybe you can work on it with whoever. Because yeah, I mean, this is just the skeleton, right? So it's a little more than a skeleton now. So I'll email that to you, and maybe you could look at that and figure out some wording.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like Mike was saying earlier, you know, we don't want to be having this conversation, but given that we need to have this conversation, I think I just so appreciate the work that Ian and Ray and Kim and Kristen have put into this, because it's just such a clear articulation, the clearest articulation I've seen yet of the beginning to articulate to the community what's going on, where we've been, where we need to go, the information we're trying to get. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to those of you who are working on this, and Ian and Ray for, I mean, the creative work is just, it's really, it's helping me formulate a conversation that I can have with our community. So thank you.
Okay, so just to get my head around this, again, I'm not able, for whatever reason, Kim, to download the timeline, but I just want to make sure I know what you guys need for us, since we probably won't be meeting again before the next rollout. So does it make sense for you to share with me the next video as it's developed, and then I share it out to the committee, ask for feedback to come directly to me, and then or you know, something like that between now and the next one going out, since we won't have a meeting to do that at?
yeah, we have the production of the second video that would be between September 28th and then October 4th or so, and then edits and revisions to that second video happen that week, and we release the second video on October 9th.
Okay.
And then the third video production is the week of October 12th. The release is October 21st. We had said the straw poll goal date was October 26th. Okay. So that would go, the third one would go out a week before the straw poll. So,
okay. Well, yeah, that actually sounds like we will have at least a chance to view it as a committee before it goes out. But ideally, you would have had our feedback before then. Is that correct? So that we're seeing it after the feedback's been incorporated, and we can say, looks great.
Yes, we want thumbs up. We want everybody to have a pretty pretty firm 2 thumbs up
Yep.
before it goes anywhere. So
Okay.
yeah, and I think the easiest place to do that is at the script level. You know, once Ian and his wife start in the production and start putting the artwork in, you know, it just, if we're going to change the wording, then they have to change the artwork. So what we
Gotcha.
really want to be now that you know what the feel of it's going to be and
Yep.
what, you know, how this is going to look, to take a critical look at the script and really make sure that we're saying what we want to say, what we need to say, and what we hope people will hear. And
Okay.
then the call to action at the end of this first one was to share this video with your neighbors and friends. Yeah, we really want to try to get as many people access to all of this information, and that's our goal as the engagement, and that's what the goal of this video is to provide information to as many people as we possibly can.
Okay, that's really helpful. And going through the process for one round is helpful as well. So I think what maybe if you guys are okay with me sharing out what we have for a script for the next 2 with the whole group and getting feedback on the script, because that really is the meat of it, as you say, and then folks will have an opportunity to provide that feedback around a certain deadline, pass it on back to you guys. Ian and Ray will do their magic, and then we'll view it and give it our blessings. That sounds great.
Yep, and
Okay.
the important thing to remember is that if we don't get comments back, then the timeline is really, we just need to get the comments by the dates on that timeline in order for us to have this, because everybody's agreed to this timeline in terms of, you know, especially Ian and Ray, who are, you know, donating very generously their time and energy. So to be respectful of that.
Yep. Okay. Does that sound good to everyone as far as how we're going to move through that? Okay, great. Thank you guys again. And Ian, I know you're short on time, so thank you. This is awesome. And we'll look forward to seeing what's next, but you'll have feedback from us before then.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad people like it. I guess the only thing, you know, as I said previously, working on these, you know, the script is important, obviously, but image is almost as important. So, and all of that helps us, and especially during this tight timeline. So the details that you gave us previously in terms of what images you like to see helped a great deal. So for moving forward on scripts 2 and 3, same thing applies to those as well, as we sort of write those and tweak. Having ideas that you'd like to see for imagery is going to really work for us. And I'd also say in terms of we still need to record, if Patrick's still able to do the voiceover for these, we need to record that before this first one goes out, and obviously when revisions are made, things like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I thought your voiceover sounded great, and I'm happy to be the voiceover as well. And just need to know, is that something I would record in my office, or do you have a studio? We can figure out logistics, but I'm happy to do whatever's needed.
If you have a way to record high quality audio in a quiet environment without echoes, that's the best thing. If you have that available to you, great. If not, our studio is our house, and we do have our mechanical room is actually our audio room because it has a lot of sound dampening stuff in it. So I'm fine with you coming down here. Obviously, you would need to remove a mask and things like that to do the recording. So there's logistics there in these times that we have to deal with. So I guess if you're able to record audio yourself, and maybe you just record a test file of it and send it to me and I can see how it sounds, that would be a good starting point. And then if we need to make it a little bit better, we can figure out how to do that.
Sure, I can use, I can work with the person that I've been shooting the videos with, and he has some better technology than anything that I can get my hands on readily.
Yeah.
And we'll shoot that. And actually, if I get the Not sure if I have the final version of the script or if it's I don't remember if that was a Google Doc and it's already updated, but I can record that audio with him probably tomorrow afternoon even.
Okay.
And send the file to you, Ian, and we'll see if that's going to work or not.
Yeah, the main thing is in terms of voiceover, it's just a very quiet room and not a lot of echoes in the space that you're doing it. That helps. If it has echoes, it's harder to then tweak that file after the fact. So as sound dead as possible is good. And I think, yeah, if Kim or Kristen can just send a PDF of the script, just the script without any other notes, that'll make it easier for you to read through.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I think it may not be as I like the anonymous voice. I don't know why I like it exactly, but it feels, I mean, especially with all the video work that Patrick has done over the last few weeks, I wonder if there's some advantage to having kind of a omniscient, anonymous narrator for these videos.
Won't be offended, Nancy, if you just say you're sick of listening to me.
No, dear, no. You know I could listen to you forever, as of course, but I just think there's something. There may be some advantage to having the anonymous voice.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that as well, and I think there's something to be said for that. Initially, I felt like it was important to have Patrick be that voice, but I think as I've seen this project unfold, I'm starting, and I like Ian's voice. I think he's got a really nice pace, and so I think I'm with you on that. It's up to everybody else, what everybody else feels.
Does anyone else have a strong opinion either way? Looked like we lost Patrick for a minute too. He had this sort of frozen smile. But does anyone else in the group have an opinion one way or the other? Okay, so maybe we defer to Kristen and Kim to make that call.
I think it would be great if Ian would do it, and it would be less trouble for Patrick because I know he's really busy. I think it's great. It's even my husband's like, oh, I like the voice. So I mean, we're all showing it to our husbands, right, and whatever, or wives or whoever, partners. But he liked that a lot. So
is Ian still here, or did he leave?
I'm here.
Oh, would you be willing to do that, Ian? Would you be willing to do the voiceover?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't particularly like my voice, and because I lived in England most of my life, I know that sometimes some of my speaking or the way that I pronounce things is a little bit different. So if you noticed anything where you're like, why did he say it like that? Even if it's like a slight thing, let me know and I can tweak it.
Just how you said Starksboro, that was it.
Right, I was going to say the same thing.
Just that, nothing else. Otherwise, exotic might be good.
How do you say Starksboro?
Just like that.
Wait, so how did I say it then?
Just like that.
No, I think you
didn't
said
notice it, and I live in Starksboro, Ian.
Oh, that's good. That's good then. All right. Well, that's awesome, Ian. And then you can do it on your own time. And Kristen, we'll have to commit to get a final script with these revisions to Ian tomorrow.
Yeah, tweak that. And then it doesn't seem like there's going to be much changed. I've made some notes in terms of the iconography of the consolidation. We can find another icon for that other than buildings. That's an easy fix.
Yep, and the architecture, creating architecture on the vision or whatever that was.
I sent that to Patrick to look at and maybe tweak. I sent him an email so he could get that back to me at some point tomorrow, and we can easily get that into a PDF and send it over.
Okay, great. Well, we'll keep revising until we get approval for the final.
And I guess that's a good question, just in terms of the final, who needs to take a look at that just to sign off on it before. And then we also need to talk about how we're going to share this and who's responsible for sending this out.
Well, the second, yeah, I think Patrick, there's a pretty well-oiled machine for getting things out on social media, Front Porch Forum and email blasts. So I think, and we've added to our list of folks that get regular updates, all of the select board members, which is great. So that's pretty easy. That part's pretty easy to do. I think Dawn is on here, so she can chime in as well. But I would think if it goes to Patrick and myself as the chair, and maybe Dawn, you know, just for a thumbs up, I think we're probably good.
I'd also be happy to be in that group, if that's helpful.
Sure.
I would too.
So,
okay, and again, the key thing would just be a quick turnaround,
Yeah.
you know, because we won't have days. We'll probably at that point only have hours once the final is done and we're ready to get it out.
Yeah.
And can anybody else see that timeline, just so you guys know what we're working against?
Yeah.
Okay. If you can't, I can email it separately so you can see it.
Dawn, did you want to chime in?
I just am worried that too many people make it appear like it's a action behind the scenes, and so you have to be cautious about too many committee members working, because if there's enough of your committee members, it could be construed as action outside a meeting.
So right now, I think what we're trying to do is you've got all the feedback. I think that door is starting to close now, right? Or and so for this first video, so now it's going to be reworked and sent out for a final thumbs up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess, and you're hoping that would come for that final thumbs up on what day?
I'll have to look at I think we said the 27th. So it can go out on the, let me look.
Oh, you're talking about the second one.
No. This first one goes out, what did we say, the 21st? Sorry.
21st.
22nd.
21st, 22nd. So, yeah, so we need revisions. Comments and edits are due by tomorrow.
Okay.
And then we built in 5 days for Ian to do what he needs to do. So
Okay.
the second piece of this is really more like having a proofreader. It's not, we're not looking for any changes when the final goes out. It's just to make sure that everything's spelled right, make sure that it looks okay on your screen, to make sure that the revisions did get incorporated the way everybody presumed that they were going to. So so we're not going to be revising anything, and Dawn, to your point about, so we're not going to be taking any action other than asking just other people to have eyes on it so that we don't send something out with typos or things like that.
And I apologize for the untimeliness of losing my internet connection. Am I still doing a voiceover or not?
You're off the hook.
I'm off the hook? Okay.
Actually, you are doing the voiceover, but you have to make your voice sound like Donald Duck.
Okay.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to propose. Since Kristen is representing the board and Kim is representing the community, this group gets all their feedback between now and the end of the day tomorrow, and then the thumbs up can maybe come from Patrick. And let's just keep it simple. As long as, I think we need to just get it out and not, if people have additional feedback, send it in, and then otherwise, I think we move it. Does that sound good to everybody?
You mean on this first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Krista,
So,
I have one more question, sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Regarding that, how do you want it delivered? It's currently, the ones are sitting on my Vimeo page, and it's a private link, which you could share, but I don't know if you have your own Vimeo or YouTube that you want to put and host the video at and share that link. That might be more appropriate.
I think that's what we've been doing with the school videos. Is that right, Patrick, via YouTube?
Yeah, so it's just it's a YouTube video that we then link to lots of places. So YouTube has worked well for us.
Okay. Yep. So if you want to continue to do that, what I can do is just supply you with a file that you would then upload to YouTube.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so I think if we're good on the video piece, which is awesome, that leaves everything else. So we had a third group. So we've talked about the video messaging and about the straw poll. And we had a third group that was going to talk about how to incorporate and whether or not to revisit the values with the community. And I think that was Don and Liz and Mary. Don, did you want to share a little bit of the thinking around that? Don, oh, there you are.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the right button to turn the screen on. So originally we talked about the values and that the board could use that information in a future discussion. And then as Liz and Mary and I sent an email to each other about what we were about getting ready to do, it suddenly didn't feel as clear to me. So I talked back with Krista, and then we talked with Sue on the following Tuesday, I think. And Sue, I really felt helped clarify that probably the first thing we really needed to do was revisit those values with our community. It did two things. It fulfilled the part where we said we're going to come back for more feedback, and it'll help us prioritize them when we look back at those options again. Did I miss anything, Krista?
Nope. So I think what we need to figure out is how best to do that. And we talked about, and the video might provide a nice segue for this, if those values are going to be referenced in the second video, it could be a good opportunity to then provide a link for folks to either revisit what they already articulated in the fall if they participated in the fall engagement, or look at them anew and weigh in on these values. The questions, I think, are whether we are asking people to prioritize them or rank order them. You know, what is it we're trying to capture about them? And so that's, I think, the question that I was hoping this group could chew on a bit, so that we know how to be true to our process and how to make sure that we do go back with those values in mind, and keep them at the forefront as we're thinking about these decisions.
It would help me in thinking about this. Can you, I know I have it, but can you put a
Yep.
link in the chat to that values document that Sue did?
Yep. Is that more helpful than a screen share, or would folks like to see it? Does it matter? I can do both.
Yeah, I'd like to have something I can copy and paste.
Okay, so
into
let me do
the-
that. Hang on 1 minute. Okay, so that link brings you to all of the values, but they're arranged in a, I'm not finding the word, scale. They're in a scale so that folks can prioritize them. And
Okay. That's helpful to have it in front of us.
yeah, so you can maybe see them here. And I also wanted to share, well, okay, so let's pause there for a minute and thoughts people have on how best to revisit this with the community. Or again, introduce it for the first time for folks that don't know that these values were developed last fall.
Well, it seems to me that the video would be a good place to do that. If we can do it without making the video 10 minutes long. I think we'd have to look at, I think we just have to, Kristen and I would have to look at it and think about ways to structure the script and the dialogue sort of leading into the next essential information. So it's just a lot of information here, but that's one idea. And if we can do it, I think it'd be a good place to do it.
Did Sue have suggestions about what she meant by, what she had in mind when she was picturing revisiting this with the community?
I think trying to remember which of the engagement meetings where we asked people to rank order these based on their importance to them. Was that one of the community engagement meetings?
I was
we were trying to see if there was a way for people to provide input into and prioritize these values. Is that valuable? Is that helpful to our decision making to know where people weigh in on these range of values?
I was just going to say that I don't think I mean, they're all so important. It just seems like forcing people into a false choice to have to rank order them. I rather think if we're going to do something with them, it might be useful to ask people to put more flesh on these bones.
The fact that so much has happened in a year might be a reason for having people bring more to these.
It is, yeah, I think there's something to that piece. Like, so when these were developed, it was a whole different world.
But I'm not sure I agree with the concept of a false choice. I think as I've come to think about this, we do have choices to make. And I don't think there's anything false about those choices. And I think much as we would like to make decisions that attend to all of these values equally, there isn't an option that I see that does that.
But I mean, that's like asking people to rank order the goals of the strategic plan. I mean, they're all important.
Prioritize those goals. We chose priority objectives because we knew we couldn't do them all at the same time.
Yeah, but if you asked most people which of those are most important, they're all vastly important. And they're also all interconnected. It's not a simple rank ordering problem. It's almost a group learning problem about what does this really mean to us, and how do we experience these values in a specific way, and hearing from each other about the meaning of these things, these values, in you know, in real life.
I wonder if this scale, so there's not a rank ordering or a prioritizing in this scale that I have on my screen now. Are all of your images also on my screen, or do you just see the document? You don't see all your faces,
I
do
see
you?
both.
You see both.
I see images and the thing.
Okay, well, anyway, so this idea of having people, everybody's going to put academic excellence in a different point on the scale, right? So it might give us a sense of the weighting people are giving different values, recognizing that there's value in all of them. We determined that already. But the weighting of those really, it varies by individual.
I think that if we did some kind of a rating, we're going to cause more division when all of these, just re-looking at these is uplifting for people. It just reminds us of who we are and what we care about. And I think keeping it at that level is better than going, okay, who wants this and who doesn't want that? And, I think something about the values is so important, but hopefully for really connecting us.
Anyone else have thoughts about this?
So we were going to send this out as part of the survey. Is that what you were saying? Or is this separate?
Yeah, the idea was that we would revisit these in some way prior to surveying people, prior to the straw poll.
I think it's simply really helpful to have everyone reminded of what all our values, what values the communities have come up with.
So Sally, not to ask for more ranking or anything, just simply have the values present for people to see.
Yeah, possibly just have them see, but they could even possibly add, a little something, because things have changed a lot if they want, but just so they can throw that in there. I don't know if, I don't know more. Yeah, I don't know if that means then that doesn't mean they're incorporated necessarily, but just so that people get a chance to express themselves around these.
I like that piece of giving people an opportunity to express themselves in some way, and maybe it's not rating or ranking or prioritizing what we already have, but just, does this still resonate, and is there something missing?
Again, acknowledging that times are different, and maybe people have some other thoughts or something.
And I can certainly live with that. I just think it'll be important for people to know if there isn't a prioritization of these 8, the board then has to decide what option they think best fits some combination of these 8. And in effect, I think we'll prioritize these 8 themselves in choosing a scenario to move forward with.
Again, it's data, and we've got lots of different kinds of data, and this is certainly, it's a different kind of data, but it is.
This is the kind of data that touches people's hearts most, and I think it's going to be really powerful data for them to keep in mind.
It does make me wonder about whether I wish we could gather people and enable people to put more flesh on these bones. And I know you're in a hurry, but it makes me wonder about what the options would be for creating one or a series of Zoom gatherings where people can get into breakout groups with
Yeah,
and put the flesh on these bones.
yeah, let's come back to that because I do have a couple of thoughts about that. John?
So in our conversation with Sue, she kept reminding us that we said we would go back to the community for feedback, and she kept reminding us that the values are what we've been building all this work on, and that's the sort of the way we can go back to the community because so much has changed. We need some information that the community might provide if we ask them to look at the values again. But I wish I could remember her words, but she kept pushing us back to that conversation about, you said you were going back to them. You can't come with a whole bunch of different new questions and ask those questions now. You said you were coming back. Go back with the values and know where they are on the values.
So Don, were you thinking that meant to actually go back and do the rating of them? Is that what you're saying?
I took it as we need to know now, when people look at these, how do they feel? Do they still feel the same? We need to know that. We're about to ask some questions, and possibly the board's going to need to make some decisions, and we really need to know how they feel about these. Do you still feel the way you did when you created these, or has something changed? And maybe this one or that one isn't quite as important right now.
I wonder if we can't find a way to remind people of these values in the video and give people the opportunity to see if they still ring true or if there's something missing. That's kind of the first pass, and maybe the second pass is what Nancy was saying in a virtual engagement, that there can be some more conversation around it. I'm hoping that there will be at least one opportunity, if not a few, to do some virtual engagement with folks around all this information we're sharing, and more conversation about this piece of it could be part of those engagements.
Oh, Krista, when are you envisioning the timing for that?
Well,
I mean, I've gotten a little bit lost in this conversation here, because it seems like this is a big piece of unfinished business.
I would agree.
So yeah, so maybe you could just lay out what's ideal, and then what's possible, and then what we're actually think we're going to do. Because if we're writing script for the video in the next week, and want these values to be in there, but if these values have changed, we've got to make sure that we're.
I mean, they're the historical values, and that's what we've got. Just like with the historical numbers. I mean, I think we can present them as we have them. And, you know, the video isn't the place to sort of delve into it at all. Because like I said, we've got 2 minutes and we've got a lot of stuff to put out. So I want to separate them out a little bit. They'll be involved, certainly, because it's what the community, what came out of those events. And as to going forward, I'm not sure how to do that. I mean, I can ask a few people who went and show them and say, what do you think? Is it still the same? You still feeling the same? I mean, I don't know.
So to get back to your, I think maybe part of your question, Kim, it was my understanding that we were going to find multiple ways to engage the community through the month of October leading up to the straw poll. And that the video is one part of that, but that some sort of, it can't be in person, but you know, virtual engagement like we've had around going back to school. We had 2 different town halls, one with staff, one with community members. It could be a town hall style, or it could be more of a Zoom meeting where people can get into breakout rooms. Sue would help us to design that and possibly facilitate that. But some opportunities for people to grapple with together the information we're sharing and the decisions we're contemplating. So the video, I don't think the script needs to change, but the timeline is probably going to be concurrent with, if it's going out through into mid-October, it may be concurrent with 1 or 2 of these meetings. I don't think that's problematic, but I think Kristen's right that we can share what has happened already. And the conversation now is, do we allow people the opportunity to revisit those values through this process before we make, as part of the input we gather before we make decisions? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just thinking about sort of using the video, but also just could we also send the values out with sort of that 20-point scale, however you want to look at it, electronically too, so we could gather more data from more folks who might not be able to make a Zoom or town hall meeting. I don't know if there's enough time where we could do that and then gather that information so that when there is the Zoom or town hall meeting, that we also can say, you know, here's what other folks out in the community, and maybe those folks who are attending that too, here's what they came back with, and what else do you think? So just another touch point for other folks to sort of share their thoughts. I wouldn't say prioritize, but just like that sort of Likert scale. And because I think it's really important that we do have some sense, but then also if folks really want to talk about it, be there too in the room, if you will, to rehatch that conversation. Just a thought I had. I didn't know if we could have a link at the end of the second video, if that's feasible. If Patrick, at the end of one of your weekly updates, you talk about the, you know, a quick little, well, not necessarily quick, but a survey regarding the community values from last year. We sort of prime that pump, and it'd be also a good trial run to see sort of what type of response rate we get on something that has, you know, a survey electronic link, and thinking about best practice for the one that we put out at the end of October.
I think that's a great idea. I was thinking the same.
Yeah, and I'm certainly happy to mention it in the videos. However, those videos are probably not going on in perpetuity. So they may be coming to a close relatively soon, as at least as a regular weekly kind of a thing. I just wouldn't want to lean too heavily on those exclusively to get the word out.
I think at the end of one of those, that new video would be a good spot because it's, you know, well, it depends on how it gets out to people. Whatever gets to most people would be the best, I would think.
And I think the video is for, I don't know, I mean, for getting information out that's specific about the survey. It's tough. This doesn't fit into a box or a place, does it, really? So, what would be like the teaser for it? Like, here's the values everyone picked out last fall. How are people feeling this fall? Is that basically the question? I mean, would you knock any of them out? Would you add any? Would you knock any out? Yeah.
You know, do these still you know, we're going to provide a link. Oh, it looks like we have I phoned a friend. And we've got a special friend who's joining us.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Hi, Sue.
Hello.
I told the group that I phoned a friend. So I texted Sue to say we're struggling with this how best to capture the values with the community. And so here you are doing overtime to help us through this piece. So I think if I could just give a kind of a recap of where we are, we've got some great content for our video and trying to figure out now how to ensure the community knows about these values that we established in the fall and has some kind of opportunity to reflect on those. And folks we're not totally sure if we really want those to be rank ordered or prioritized. And so kind of just struggling with what to do with that.
Or added to, since it's been a very different year.
Or added to, that's right. So what we had the idea of in our next video that's going to go out, that script is focused around data. And so we would be sharing that this was collected in our fall engagement work and that, you know, we could let folks know or give them a chance to reflect and add on anything that is missing.
And Sue, hi. What I've been thinking about how valuable it would be, but I don't know how to do it in these troubling times, to ask people to invite people to, I've been describing it in this meeting as put flesh on the bones of those values and describe what those values mean to them in some specific terms, in some way that people can hear each other, hear more from each other about the meaning of those values and why people see those values, all of them, as important. I've been grading against rank ordering them or asking people to decide, is this more important than that, partly because they're so interconnected. But I'm too new at Zooming, I guess, to know how we could do that, how we could really have a conversation that enables people to to speak and listen to each other along those lines.
So I think listening to what I've heard in just these few minutes, I think one thing, Nancy, I would say about what you're saying is just to what came into my mind as you were speaking is that those values are the distillation of lots and lots and lots of feedback we got, right? And so to flesh them out more at this moment, I guess I wonder about that, because it feels like we heard a lot from people about what they cared about, and we worked hard to distill that into something that we felt was an accurate representation of where people were. So I guess I'd want to know more about your thinking about why you would want to have people kind of flesh those out again.
I guess my thinking is, in order for people to get back in touch with those values,
Mm-hmm.
because it was a long time ago, and those conversations were, you're right, very detailed and specific, but this is a distillation. And as Sally said, a lot has happened between
Mm-hmm.
then and now. But I'm also curious about how you might picture us, what you see as the next step for our committee in relation to those values.
Well, for me, what I think you're getting to the place where there's going to start to be really hard decisions getting made, right? And to me, the most important thing is that those values are very well integrated into people's decision-making process. And I like the idea of giving people a chance to revisit the values in light of all that's happened. And I think the idea that Sally suggested of giving people an opportunity to say, is there anything else that's emerged as being really important? If you don't, so because those values are a distillation of a lot of community feedback, I think it wouldn't be, I think it would still honor the process if you simply made sure that the decision makers are, really using those values to guide their process when they're trying to make these hard decisions. And I think if you did give the community a chance to say, given all that's happened, which of these matter the most to us, I think that could give people that are trying to make those hard choices a little bit more direction than they might have right now. And so I think that would be the idea of asking people either to rank the values in some way, or to just simply say which of those are most important. So I think the purpose of doing either of those two things is to provide even a little more sense about what matters the most to the community as people are facing some really tough decisions.
Maybe the question, if we have to go that route, is which of these values are still important?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think there's different ways you can ask the question. I mean, one of the things about values is usually they don't shift that much, right? So it's different than goals or objectives. And I think if the world hadn't changed so much, I don't think you would need to ask a question like that, which of this still matters to you. But I do think because we are in such an unprecedented time and things really have shifted, that is a very reasonable thing to check in about. Which,
so
and
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we just put it in the survey? I mean, as part of the survey, and just do one instead of maybe being more confusing and having two things? I mean, is there a way to incorporate it in the survey sort of as a something?
You're talking about the straw poll, the one at the end of October, right?
Mhm.
I think that you could, and I think if you do it that way, you're going to have a less confusing, more streamlined process. And I think if you combine the values with the straw poll, it may shift your results a little, because people might look at those options and say, okay, I want to answer these values questions to get me to the option that I prefer, if you know what I mean. So I think that could be a downside, but it might be a trade-off you all are willing to make because of just in order to make things maybe less confusing. If you ask about the values just separately and people, they know that you're going to do this, you're going to provide some more data and have the second survey that asks them to look at options, the result might be a little more kind of pure, I guess. That's probably a terrible word, but that's the word that's coming into my mind. Does that make sense?
Sue, did you mean pure if it was done in two different ones, or more pure if it was all done in one?
If it was done in two different ones. I think that if you do it all together, I just think people will look ahead in the survey maybe and try to answer the values question to get to the outcome they want around the options. Maybe not. Maybe they'll just do those values questions. I mean, I think that it would be important to have those first in the survey. And so I guess if you structure the survey a certain way, maybe people could just answer those questions and then go on to looking at the options.
And then we could ask Rob's wife if it's even valid to put values questions in a survey, because she might know that. I mean, there may be some survey-ish rule about that, right? If you're trying to get this kind of information, then you don't ask these kind of questions at the same time. I mean, that could be a construct that exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like those are two different subject matters, and I agree with Sue to separate them, because it almost seems disingenuous to ask about values and then turn gears and then ask about options. It seems like we're asking for two very different things, even though, of course, they're all related. So I don't know how the delivery would work, but I agree that they shouldn't all be compacted together,
I think today Krista shared with me a matrix that the facilities committee is using to help them kind of rank the options that they're looking at. And I was really happy to see that. And Krista, is that something that you shared with the group?
No, I'm just about to put it in the chat. I know I share quickly sometimes and then everybody looks at that and not, so I'm going to share it now, but I'm glad you mentioned it because I did want to make sure to do that with folks. I think it's.
When I saw this matrix that I think Kevin put together, that was reassuring to me, because it seemed like the values are front and center in the facility committee's process, which I think is really important and honors the engagement work that happened. And I think if you did the values survey first, it's another data point for that, for all of that group, plus, the superintendent, the board. It's another data point for them when they're kind of looking at those values and doing their work. And I think it does honor the fact that the world has changed a lot. And so it does, to me, make sense to kind of check back in with people about those values. And so that's why I think Krista and I thought that doing that check-in about the values could be useful. I think if you decide that it's too confusing, that you could either combine it with the other survey or not do it. But then you're just, I think you're giving people a little bit less of a chance to have a voice in how things are unfolding. Having said that, if you look at that matrix, and that's really the process that committee is using to inform its decision making, I think it does a good job of having those values front and center.
Well, not all of the values are in the list.
I think if you look across the top, some come under programming and some come under brick and mortar. And let's see.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. I know. I see everybody going like this.
I mean, I think another consideration we've had, Sue, is how much time do we have? How much bandwidth do people have right now to put anything out? I'll bring in something I didn't bring in before, but you've got the personality types, the certain personality types that are drawn to this sort of thing. So certain personality types, when you say values, are like, what? You know. So again, how much bandwidth do people have? We're trying to be respectful of that. And we always want to do more than we can, right?
Yeah.
No matter what we're doing. And we're trying to be thorough. I don't think anyone can say we're not trying to be thorough. So anyway, it's just sort of where we're at.
Yeah.
I also find myself wondering, is our goal to remind folks of the values that came about in the fall, or to give them an opportunity to change the values? Because if it's about changing values, and I get in light of everything that's happened, but our current COVID pandemic crisis isn't going to be here 10 years from now like it is now, but the decision we're making will be. So I'm hesitant to make significant shifts to these values that happened in the fall in light of a crisis that we find ourselves in that we'll be out of for most of the time that we're going to experience this big change. And, you know, I think about the work that is going into some decision making in light of the values as they surfaced in the fall. That work will likely be well underway. The facilities group will have done its piece with the current values before we've given the community an opportunity to change those. So let's say the community does say, yes, we're going to change these. Now people have to go back and redo everything they just did to reflect on the previous values. I just wonder about what is it we're really trying to do with the values with our community.
I think if the time frame is such that the facilities committee is going to do its work before you put out the survey, then I would question whether you want to put the survey out. You don't want to ask people for their input if you're not incorporating it into your decision making. So I hear those concerns, Patrick, and I don't think you'll do anything if you do a small survey or a brief survey. I don't think that would give you cause to make major changes to those values, which were based on a lot of really intensive work and a lot of conversation. And those were core things that matter to people across all the towns and across many conversations. I do think, though, that it might be interesting for you to give people a chance to say, are there things that didn't come out in here that really matter to you given where we find ourselves right now? So I guess I wouldn't get too stuck on this piece. I think there's some advantages to doing a check-in with the community about the values and what their priorities are around those. But if the timing doesn't work and you have concerns about bandwidth and people's capacity, I think the most important thing is that people who are making decisions based on that report are integrating the values and keeping them at the top of their mind in how they kind of rank those decisions and do that hard work. To me, that's the most important thing. And the second most important thing is that the community is reminded of those values and knows how they're being informing decision making. Because as you start to suggest specific scenarios, there will be pushback in the community, because no matter what scenario you suggest, there are going to be people who are very unhappy with it, right? And so it's really important to be able to be transparent about how you're making those decisions. So informing your decisions with the values and then communicating with the community about your process, I think those are the two most important high-level things. And whether or not you feel you have the bandwidth to kind of check in with the community about the values again, I think that's a decision the group can make and kind of move on. I don't think that's a place to get stuck.
So let's pause there if we can, and thank you, Sue, for helping us wade through this, because it's 9:04. We usually are pretty good at ending on time. So if people can give me just a few more minutes, or give this a few more minutes, can we just go thumbs up if you, so I think we've agreed we're going to reference these values in the next video. So can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on whether you think we should also give people the opportunity to provide some feedback in a brief survey? Is that a clear question? Did I phrase that? Okay. All right. So thumbs up if you think that in addition to referencing the survey in the video, we should, separate from the straw poll, give people a chance to weigh in via a brief survey.
You mean in addition to referencing the values in the video?
In the video. Should we have a link that says, lots changed, let us know how you feel about these now? So if you think we should do that at this stage, put your thumb up. Down if you don't, okay. No, no, no. Yes, lukewarm. Okay, I'm seeing most people are either lukewarm or no with a couple of yeses. So then I think we will insert the values into the script, and maybe Don and Liz, if you guys want to be sure to look at that piece of the script when it comes around, that it reflects that work, that would be great, since you guys were on that work group. And yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
I just would ask that when we reference the values, we do it not in single words, but use the descriptions that were written from those conversations that are in that document you shared with us. I would also say that I found a minor lack of clarity in the equity one, and I put in the chat what the wording should be.
Yeah, and what I can do before the call ends, I can save the file with the chat so that all of that feedback goes to Kim and Kristen.
Okay.
Right, and it's tricky to get that much detail into those videos. So since this next video, I mean, I don't know, we can't take a minute on that, right? So we'll work on it. And I mean, how much, let me just look right now. Oh, that's the wrong one.
They're not that long.
So this is not that long. Okay, because the videos are not for people in my age demographic. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be sort of fun, is what he said. So we will do it in a fun way, and it will be part of the video. It's not going to be the entire video. If you-
People in our demographic are into fun. Now, come on.
Right, I know, but it can't. We can't have the videos drag on. So we will get it in there for sure.
I
but
just
it will
sent
be
an
in a-
email. I think we could list those values without the descriptors in the first video, and then go on in the second video to reinforce them with some of that wording. So they're not seeing those values for the first time in the second video.
Yeah.
So there's a perfect spot. I just sent the script back to Kristen and Patrick. So you can look at it, and we just list them out, and I think Ian can do it graphically. We probably don't even need to say them. I think he could,
Right.
because he's talking about how the community came together and shared values, ideas, and that if we list them all there, then in the second video, we go on to explain them and use them as a foundation for building the data and moving through this process. So people know that we are actually using this input that we got in the decision making, which is, as Sue said, is really important. So,
Folks, I've got to go. Sorry.
That's quite all right. Thank you for hanging in there.
Yep.
And for those of you remaining, my
Can you
last
just say
thing,
when the next meeting is?
2 weeks from today, so that would be the 29th.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, so I think we're in a place that's sound enough for the last tweaking to this the first video, and then some more ideas about expounding on the values in the second video. So please just keep sending your feedback along, and if it gets there in time, it will be incorporated. So the other thing that's lingering is the opportunity to engage with people virtually. And I'm wondering if there's a small group of folks that might want to flesh out what that could look like, and even throw out a couple dates just so they're placeholders on the calendar for October. We could do a Zoom call or webinar, potentially something like 3 parts. Part 1, here's what we're facing. Part 2, here are the options. Part 3, here are the choices or decisions we're contemplating. You know, that could all be in one meeting. Do that maybe 2 times. That's just an idea, but I think we need time for a small group of us to chew on that, and then maybe ideally bring it back to this group in 2 weeks to see if that plan sounds like it might fit our need to, in addition to sharing information with the community, giving them a chance to digest it together. And I'm suggesting a work group because we've got to get dates on the calendar if we're going to do anything like this. So if there's anybody interested in talking more about what that could look like, Sal, are you volunteering or do you have a question?
Yeah.
You're volunteering, great. Oh wait, no, you had a question. Go ahead.
I was volunteering, and also it's because another
Oh, you're breaking up, Sal.
A Zoom thing. Okay.
Oh.
I was talking with people today.
Mm-hmm.
We were writing postcards, but doing a Zoom thing. And they started talking about the article in the Addy Indy. And they really had no idea what things were being. People really have no idea. So I really feel like it's important to do more outreach, because it's hard to reach people. I don't know what's best, but we need to do it.
Anyone else have any thoughts or interest in being part of that? Rob?
Yeah, I can be part of that work group.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I will follow up with Sally and Rob, and if anybody else wants to chew on it and get back to me, let me know. But our goal will be to come back to this group with what we think is a good plan for doing that work. Because I agree with you, Sally, that that's an important piece, that this is a really a multi-pronged effort of engagement. So, okay. This is a lot. You guys are rock stars for hanging in there, both past bedtime and past our meeting deadline, but also just through this whole process. And it's a lot to be asking people to meet every 2 weeks. And I'm hoping and envisioning that come December, our work will have mostly concluded around this piece, because then, oops.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So hopefully we can take a little bit of a breather after that point. So unless there's anything else, I think we've exhausted our invited or our guests that were here earlier. I don't think Herb or Mike are still here, but if anyone has anything else to add, please feel free to do so, because we did talk about a lot.
I just want to quickly reflect on something that I listened in on part of the facilities meeting yesterday, and something that Patrick said that, and I don't know if Kristen is still here. I might have to talk with her offline, but it was about the fact that people can vote for paying higher taxes. People can vote to close or not close the schools, but what they can't vote for is the programming that Patrick, maybe the way you said it, it made a lot of sense to me. And I thought, you know, that's a piece of information in a way that maybe when we work on these videos, people are sort of understanding, you know, what the paradigm of that and the difficulty of what that looks like. And one of the guests was talking about cutting programming, and I think Patrick said something like, well, it would mean letting go of 93 people in order to keep our programs as they are if we didn't do anything, or something like that. I can't remember, you know, I'd have to go back, but you know, a 30% cut in staffing or programming, you know, those numbers start to look really very real. And so so whatever we can do to put those numbers out for people so they understand what that looks like, I think is going to be important. And the video is an opportunity for us to do that. But I know that the time doesn't line up. We don't have anything. But if we can have our ultimate goal being that we get as many people aware of what's happening and engaged, and so they understand, then I think we'll be successful. That's ultimately, as a community engagement person, when I think about being successful, that's what it looks like. So I just wanted to say that. And again, Patrick, that I have to go back and hear your words again, but it just sort of struck me, and I thought a lot about it today, about how we can articulate that.
Well, and to build on that, I guess, I think I said something along the lines. So we've talked about sort of the three-legged stool, or, you know, those three pieces of taxes, buildings, and programming. And the community has authority to decide on taxes and what they're willing to pay when they go to vote on a budget. And the community has the authority to decide on the bricks and mortar, or the buildings, if we ask them to close a school. And they can say no to both of those. And what they are effectively voting on, even though they weren't actually asked to vote on it, is to make cuts to programming. That's where those 93 people over the next 9 years is what we're projecting we would need to cut to stay at the spending threshold over that time. And so, to your point about the 93 people, so that's a piece of data, right, that is really useful. And what I'm starting to see having some value is not so much focusing on 1 year out or 2 years out, but really looking down the road a decade, right? We have NESDEC report that has enrollment projections out a decade, and we can kind of follow the numbers for budgets and spending thresholds and things out a decade. Again, lots of projections, but that's where we need to set our sights, right? That our story for our future isn't a year from now or 2 years from now. We need to look at what our trend is and what are we trending toward, and versus what do we want to be trending toward a decade from now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working lots and lots of different numbers from a lot of different angles to provide some information to help tell that story. So we have a lot of that's being built in the background right now. So as the next scripts are being written, we have some information that we can pull together. It's all still pretty drafty, but we can start to polish it up and provide it as information to help set that context. So
Okay.
to share what we have or get new information that will help tell that story.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. That was really profound when I thought about it in those terms, and then thinking about how we're going to write this script and talk about that in a way so people understand the difficulty of this whole community decision, and who's responsible for what. I think sometimes those lines get kind of mixed up and people don't really understand. So, yeah. Okay, that's it.
I just want to say that I still think it's really hard to build the ends, because the way the real estate market's going right now, a lot of people are buying into Vermont right now. So I just want to say it's really hard to think of what's going to happen in 10 years. So I think other people will be thinking that too. So I think it's going to be hard to have a lot of faith in a 10-year plan that's being thought up right now.
Any other comments or thoughts? Okay, well, then I think we will take a motion to adjourn and get back together again in 2 weeks. Let's see, Liz or Andrew, do you mind just making that motion?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Great, and Liz, you are the default second. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to share the chat and send that to you guys, Kim and Kristen. All right, have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Krista. Bye-bye.
Good night.